Today I wanted to talk to you about something I noticed coming from the Ministry of Education. Now, in December last year, I think 2020, the Education Minister for Kenya traveled to Britain because it is the British who produce not only Kenya's curriculum, but they also produce all the examinations that are used in Kenya. Now, I want you to marinate on that for 1 minute. That it is the British who produce every single exam that is used in Kenya at all levels. Not just primary school and secondary school, but also all colleges. All certificates come from England. Now, I want you to think what that means. I want you to think what kind of pathetic country Kenya is to have the slave master producing educational materials. Now you ask yourself, what kind of man allows his worst enemy to teach his children? Think about that for 5 minutes. See, I told you that the brainwashed Kenyan is literally out of his mind. He has to be. How do you allow a foreign nation to be responsible for your curriculum and to be responsible for your exams? So you can clearly see in this case that it is the Mzungu who determines what African children are taught in school. So they still control the education system directly. They also control, and I don't want to go in this direction, the religious system, because the same Africans in Kenya are also worshipping statues of Europeans in church. No, but I don't want to go in that direction. So let me focus on education before I get carried away. So that clearly shows you that Kenya is still openly and obviously under British colonialism. Because don't forget that Kenya is still under British military occupation for the last 130 years. Until today, Kenya is an occupied country. Now, so the education minister went to England, of course, to consult with his masters and to oversee the production of those examination papers, which means everything is filtered to sustain the system that is there in Kenya today. Because the system in Kenya today for education, and this is a huge topic, but I want to talk about very, very narrow things. So the system of education in Kenya today is based upon white supremacy, is based upon European supremacy, is based upon British supremacy. Nothing negative is said about the Mzungu within the Kenyan education system. In fact, when you're going through it, the entire history of Africa is reduced to the history of European activity in Africa. Every single time they start a narrative about Africa, they start with the Mzungu. For example, they tell you, let's say they're talking about the kingdom of Songhai. If at all they talk about it, they begin by saying that so-and-so Mzungu was the first to go to the kingdom of Songhai. So the history begins with the Mzungu and ends with the Mzungu. You never learn anything really about what the people of Songhai did for themselves, but you're told what the Mzungu did in Songhai. And so you can see how this process of colonial control happens. So every single curriculum change must be approved by London. This is the extent to which Kenya is a sold out nation. Like I always tell you, the elite that rules Kenya in the interest of the foreigners, never in the interest of the people. And it is through this miseducation that explains a lot of the docility of Kenyans. It explains a lot why Kenyans are able to remain in poverty and never complain. It explains why a gold mine, the largest gold mine in Kenya, can be handed over to the British and not a single Kenyan complain. They think it is natural for the Mzungu to be on top of them and for them to be below. This is accomplished through severe and deep brainwashing in schools So the history is massaged. The education system is massaged to make sure that white people look as good as possible. In fact, according to the Ministry of Education, the ancient Egyptians are Europeans. That's the nonsense that they teach our students. Another thing they teach our students, they tell our students that they came from monkeys. Yeah, that's what the government teaches every single child in Kenya, that you came from a monkey. Now, that is a European myth. But European myths become truth in Kenya. And so the same student is told by the same Ministry of Education that Europeans are God. Yeah, they even show them paintings and cartoon pictures of Europeans as angels, as saints, as God himself. Literally, if you go to any primary school in Kenya and ask a child, who is God? Yeah, show me a picture of God. They will produce a cartoon picture or a painting of a European that they have been given by the Ministry of Education and the church, which controls almost 40% of the schools in Kenya. Yeah, European churches control 40% of the schools in Kenya. And in those schools, they tell African students that they came from monkeys and that Europeans are gods, angels, etc. And most Kenyans don't consider this to be an outrage. In fact, they consider this to be normal because oppression has been normalized. Self-rejection has been normalized. It is impossible to convince an African in Kenya today that he comes from greatness or that he comes from God. Because ever since he was a baby, he has been told, you came from a monkey. Said who? Said the Mzungu. And where did the Mzungu come from? Well, he came from God. He is God. This is literally what they teach in Kenyan schools. And now you see the education minister, a cabinet member, going over to England. Of course, it's a total waste of money. But it shows you the slave mentality at the highest level. That he has to go to England to seek approval for curriculum changes. Because what they wanted to do was to change the education system, to modify it slightly. Actually, it's not slightly. It's pretty extensive. The structure has been changed. What they have not changed is the philosophy of education and the content of education. The philosophy is white supremacy, European supremacy. Okay? That's the philosophy. That's the guiding philosophy. In fact, they lie to the students. They even tell the students that Greeks came up with mathematics. Imagine. And anyone looking at the Moscow papyrus knows that it is ancient Africans who came up with all mathematics, including algebra, higher math, everything. Because how do you build a pyramid if you don't know mathematics and engineering? In fact, in Kenyan schools, according to the Ministry of Education, Hippocrates came up with the medical oath. But we know that is not true. We know that's not true. We know that it is Imhotep, who was worshipped by the Greeks as Asclepius, who came up with that oath. The Greeks came up with absolutely nothing. Everything they said, they learned from the ancient Africans living in the Nile Valley. Every single thing. And so the Ministry of Education of Kenya lies. In fact, every single thing that you read in science, history, all of it is a lie. There's almost nothing that is factual that they teach to the students. They teach European myths and white supremacy. And so the boss of the education ministry goes to England to gain permission for the curriculum changes that they want to implement. So how do you explain this slave mentality? How do you explain the need for an entire government to go to England to beg for permission? I mean, explain that to me. Does that make sense to you? What is the code? What is the connection? What am I not seeing? Why do they feel obligated to beg the Mzungu for permission to change the curriculum? Someone need to explain that to me right now. Because I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding what the connection is. Unless it's much deeper than what we can see. Because a lot of these people have taken oaths to the royal family of England. occultic oaths. So they're under occult obligation to obey the Mzungu. Now, why would you take such an oath? I'm also not understanding that. So the cabinet minister goes to England to gain permission from his foreign masters for the changes in the education system in Kenya. And so, this is my own opinion. The way I'm seeing these things go, I'm beginning to see a whole lot more occultic introductions into the education system. It was bad before, but it's about to get a whole lot more worse. Why? Because they changed the two national tests that students do into 13 exams. So I'm thinking to myself, why 13? 13 is a very loaded number. I'm serious. I mean, in this business of the occult, because we know that the Kenya's elite is mostly occult. A lot of them are Luciferians, devil worshippers and things of that nature. Not all of them, but many of them. And when I say the elite, I mean not only the political elite, we are also talking about the entertainment elite, the media elite, the business and corporate elites. A whole lot of them are practicing Luciferians. And they are getting more and more bold. And they're showing their hand. We're beginning to see the little signs. Even when you're not looking for those signs, they keep on popping up. And you're like, is this a coincidence or is this a sign? Am I going crazy? Am I making things up? Is it an overactive imagination? But I always say, let's keep an open mind. Let's look and see where it goes. So they changed from 2 to 13. So the first thing I asked myself, how did they end up with 13? 13 tests. Why 13? Why not 12? Why not 11? Why not 9? Why not 14? Why 13? So 13 on its own is a suspicious number. But that is not sufficient evidence for us to say anything. It's just a number. But it makes you think. Now, the other thing they did, of course with British approval, is they changed how the certificate looks like. When you finish primary school and secondary school, they give you an actual certificate of completion with your results. Now, when you look at the certificate that they came up with, the first thing that jumps at you is the eye. It has a large eye looking directly at you. Now, why does it have an eye? Look at the picture. Look at it. Is that not an eye? Is that my imagination? Am I making anything up? So you begin to see that there's a pattern here. First of all, the exams are now 13. And as we move forward, the certificate itself has a large eye staring at you. What does that mean? Who came up with that design? Why that design? Why? Of all the designs you could have done on Earth, of all the shapes you could have done on Earth, you ended up with an eye. A single eye staring at us. What does that mean? I keep on telling you that those who worship demons are beginning to get more and more bold, and they are taking over critical sectors of the country. Not only have they taken over the entertainment media, they're also taking over the political side, and now you can see the manifestation. And they're coming out more and more in the open. And don't forget that they're trying to social engineer the society to push it in a particular direction. Why? Because they have been given instructions by the Mzungu. Never forget, every single instruction, every single thing that happens in Kenya is instructions from the Mzungu. These people cannot think for themselves. They must be given orders. Do this, do that. So they are being prepared to usher in the Dajjal. And every single thing that they are doing is in that direction. So we are in trouble. Is it hopeless? I think it's hopeless. Why? Because it is the people of Kenya who gave these people power. It is you who stood in a line and voted for these people. You put them in power. And we know that you'll put them back in power next year during the elections. So because you are the electorate, you're the people who vote, so we already know that the situation is hopeless. Because of instead of taking advantage of the elections and getting rid of them, you will put them back in power. So the situation is hopeless. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Kenya's time has come. Our time has come. Your time has come. A time to succeed and not fail. A time to grow wealth and not poverty. A time to go up and not down. It's time for you to stop walking and drive your car. Stop renting and buy yourself a house. It's your time to get blessed. Join the CCV movement and together let us kick poverty and unemployment out of Kenya. Become a member today. Donate what you can. And remember that the CCV is the only political organization in Kenya that is squarely built upon Christian values, unlike the rest. We'll see you next time. Thank you.